Does the Batman live up to the hype? I was fortunate enough to see the Batman like 3 or 4 days early before the rest of the world does. So here are my spoiler-free thoughts, my spoiler-free review of the Batman. I have made so many analysis videos, so many breakdowns and Easter eggs and theories videos on this movie. So does it live up to the hype? People are giving amazing reviews for this movie. So what are my thoughts? I had a lot of expectations going into this movie, and being a comic book fan in general, I speculate like crazy, and I want every superhero movie to be my dream superhero movie. And before this movie, we've gotten so many different Batman interpretations, but all of them have had a different goal and a different viewpoint on the character of Batman. Most recently, we had Bale, which was a hyper-realistic version of Batman. We had Affleck, which is not the typical Batman. He's a Batman that's lost his ways and comes back to the light. But we have yet to have a really good, true-to-life comic book adaptation of Batman, and frankly, this one is the closest that we've ever gotten, I think, that we could ever get. This Batman is the most like Batman from the comic book. It feels like you just ripped it right out of Year One, The Long Halloween, all those early days stories. And yes, this Batman is very much early days. He's not the typical Batman with all the gadgets, with the Robin, and he's not too sure of himself. He's not as competent as Batman has later in his life when he's like the prime Batman. He's very much early days. But that being said, he is the perfect adaptation of Year One, Year Two Batman. He makes mistakes. He's a little bit arrogant. He's obsessed with being Batman. Those are some of my favorite aspects of this movie, that he is so committed to Batman. And that being said, this is definitely a Batman movie. It's not as much a Bruce Wayne movie. It is really just a Batman movie and just dives into the psychology of Batman and what his viewpoint are on the world itself. Now you might think because of that, oh, the other side characters are not fleshed out. Surprisingly, every single side character has time to shine and their arcs are fully fleshed out. I was kind of amazed. I thought that for sure either Penguin or Alfred or Falcone, one of these more side characters were going to be feeling a little bit iffy that the writing wasn't always there. No, they used this pretty much 3-hour runtime to its fullest, and every character that we're introduced to has plenty of time to shine and feels so fleshed out. I was pretty shocked on how well all these characters were adapted. Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, Colin Farrell as Penguin, as well as Jeffrey Wright as Jim Gordon are standouts. They are acting, they're hard out at giving the best adaptations of those characters as they could and just giving such great performances. Paul Dano's Riddler is kind of different than the comics in certain aspects, but the performance is there and he is super crazy and super like the Riddler. There are certain aspects of the character that are different and things that I might have wanted to be there that weren't, but it just doesn't fit with the certain adaptation. And that's my main criticism of this movie, which it can't even be a full-on criticism, is that there are certain things that I want from these characters that aren't there just because I've read the comics and I have seen these characters for years and years and years now. So every time a movie comes out, I want them to have the best adaptation of the character and like my favorite interpretation, but that interpretation doesn't always fit this universe. So there are characters in this movie that, yes, mainly is with the Riddler, is that I would have liked the Riddler to be more in line with the comics Riddler in a sort of sense, and less like a serial killer, which they have him more in this movie. That being said, it is still a great adaptation of the Riddler. He is super smart, conniving, clever. His repartee with Batman is also amazing. There are great scenes between the two of them. All the acting is standout, and frankly, any of them could be nominated for an award. And one of my favorite parts of this movie is that yes, it is a full-on detective noir film, meaning it is slow-paced, it is gritty, it's sort of grimy in some aspects, but it's a detective story. And this movie finally shows Batman as the world's greatest detective. Robert Pattinson's Batman is the smartest Batman we have ever gotten. I kind of said it before, but Robert Pattinson's Batman is my favorite Batman. His Bruce Wayne, because I think he needs a little bit more screen time as Bruce Wayne, leaves a little more to be wanted, but his Batman is just the best Batman we have ever gotten. His mannerisms, his dialogue, even like the way that he talks is just so well done. It is literally like you're reading a comic book, but just seeing it on the big screen. So yes, it is a slow-paced detective noir film, but there is plenty of action if that's what you want. And this is a very grounded Batman story. However, it is not super realistic, for example, like the Nolan trilogy. It really fits nicely somewhere between the Nolan trilogy and the DCEU, for example, with things like the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker. Yes, it is still a little bit realistic with some stuff that Batman does with his gadgets. However, it feels so much like a comic book movie, and it has a really fun, fantastical comic book feel to it. There's definitely room for superpowered villains and heroes to show up in this universe later on. And speaking of that, there are so many fun Easter eggs and references in this movie. Matt Reeves plants so many seeds of possible villains and heroes that could show up later down the line, and I love it so much. It shows how much he cares about the character of Batman, as well as shows how much he knows about the DC universe as a whole. There are plenty of cool Batman stories that this movie sets up, as well as so many directions that the sequel could go in moving forward. The music and the cinematography also complement the movie in such great ways. This is one of the most beautiful superhero movies I have ever seen. Greg Fraser knocked it out of the park with this movie, because it's also sometimes hard to have a beautiful, beautiful image of things that are just so dark and dreary, but Greg Fraser succeeds in it, and there are some amazing shots in this movie. And so much so that some of the shots aren't just beautiful, but they help convey the emotions that we want to get from this scene, fully embracing what it means to have great cinematography. And the music, Michael Giacchino knocked it out of the park. All the characters have such different themes and convey so much emotion, whether it be anxiety, suspense, exhilaration, hope, fear. All these emotions are conveyed so well with the score. So yes, absolutely, you should go and see this movie. Now, did it live up to my expectations, up to my hype? Nearly yes. And like I said, I'm a comic book fan. I pretty much go into a movie sometimes expecting to be disappointed because yes, I overhype everything to the moon, and I definitely did it with this movie more than any others. And it's a very unrealistic of me, and I know that going into a film. That being said, this film still accomplished nearly everything I had in my mind. All the checklists I had, all the hype that I put it on, it nearly exceeded all my expectations on almost everything. Like I said, the one thing that it fell flat for me on was Riddler, but just because it's not the Riddler that I would have loved. But that being said, the Riddler is still amazing in this film. He is fantastic, and it's definitely gonna be some people's favorite part of this film. But the plot, the screenplay, the music, the cinematography, everything that we thought was gonna be great about this movie is amazing and flawless and just perfect all around. And I'm giving such great praise. I know people are gonna say, oh my gosh, you just love this movie way too much. You've been saying this since the beginning, bada. But no, guys, this movie really does meet all the hype, and definitely go see it for yourself. It is definitely worth a watch, especially in IMAX. The music, having a great sound system is definitely required. It is a great experience all around. And if I had to give a number to it, I'd give it a solid 9.4. It is a near perfect film. I love it so much. It's definitely one of my top 3 superhero movies of all time. And if you like this video, I do hope you subscribe and stick around. I'm also going to be posting a full spoiler review tomorrow, the day after that, as well as a full 2-hour discussion on the movie with a friend of mine. So thank you so much for watching. I'm going to be having plenty more of the Batman content coming out on this channel in the following weeks and probably even months. There is so much to talk about this movie. So if you like this video, I definitely hope you check that out as well. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day.